All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and get tonight's workshop underway. We have a lengthy presentation to get through tonight, and I want to go ahead and say up front that I don't believe we can get through everything that we have in front of us tonight, because some of the preliminary things right at the very beginning I think are worth us pausing and having a little bit more in-depth conversation. And I know for sure that when we get to the capital outlay, we've got 4 capital outlay projects. Each one of those capital outlay projects has the potential to be a fairly in-depth conversation. So what I propose is that we're going to jump right in. I think we absolutely get through the first couple of sections, and then when we get to the capital outlay, I'd like to at least get through an overview of those 4 projects so that we can all be thinking about them, and then we'll see how we feel. We'll see what time it is. We'll do one at a time, and we may have to reschedule because each one of these I think is very worthy of our consideration. I don't want anybody to feel rushed in having this conversation. So with that, Mr. New, please take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you mentioned, well, it's our second budget workshop. We're covering governmental funds tonight, which is primarily the general fund. And we do have a lot to cover, primarily because in the last year, the Commission has identified a number of substantial, meaningful to the community initiatives, and they've asked us to research them, and we're prepared to discuss them tonight and how we can incorporate them into the budget. And we think that on decision points, maybe an area that we haven't excelled in as staff is covering so many items in one point at one time, and that we go across them kind of fast and don't really give the Commission a chance to dig in, make a hard decision, and ask a deep question. And I think you make a good point that if we go a little bit slower through these meaty items, we may be more effective in determining where to go with these items. So I say all that. Dallas kind of foreshadowed last night that we have completed and have prepared a balanced budget, general fund budget. And of course, our utility budget will be balanced as well. But our balanced general fund budget today is given no change in millage rate. It's set at a 5.99 millage rate. We balanced it using a fire assessment for the residential rate at 175. Last night the Commission approved going up to 195. As we go through budget discussions, the Commission may decide to reallocate how we fund for certain things, may decide to take on some new projects, or they may decide that fire assessment at 175 or 185 is where they want to go. So we don't want to presuppose anything, but we have delivered a continuation budget, and we have a new face or two on the Commission. What we mean by a continuation budget is we're not adding any levels of service. We're providing the same services that we did last year, building department, planning department, codes enforcement, utilities, recreation. The Commission didn't suggest that we provide different services or new services, and so we haven't done that. And we are simply budgeting those items the same as last year relative to things like inflation. We know that fuel costs have gone up. We understand that staffing might see a merit increase or a COLA increase. So we've planned for that. So our budget includes more. It's higher on the expense side than last year, but we don't have more things in there than we had in last year's budget. It's a continuation budget. It looks like last year's budget, just adjusted for inflation. You should have before you tonight 4 different items. One is this presentation, and it's a big old fat sucker, but as the mayor says, we'll go through it at the pace that's appropriate for the Commission. And if we just need to have more workshops with fewer topics on each workshop, maybe that's the best way for us to get through this year's budget. So we have that, the presentation. Many of you know the famous list. So this is the list. These are the things that are more discretionary and what's in green says these are items that we funded, what's in red are items that we didn't. We hand that out for the commission to have an idea. These are all the extraordinary things, you know, that we included the same level of staffing as last year, or we're telling you what we've added, but these are the things that might be unique, that would be a little extraordinary. So that's what's on the list. We have submitted our staffing plan. We've been talking about this. Kind of came on the heels of discussion last year, the commission expressing they wanted to see more of a succession plan so that transition as we lose key staff members is smoother. We've developed a 10-year staffing plan. We've met with all the department heads. We've met with the city clerk's office to put this together. It's like your CIP in terms of it's flexible. It's our best guess at what we're going to need. We will reevaluate it every year. There's also a little workshop sheet here. One of the things that we've discovered, I mean, we've tried to run the leanest that we can, keep our costs as low as possible, provide a high level of service. And we did just a very informal employee survey just this week, and we got back a lot of hey, we're a little bit short-staffed here. And that's just what we're hearing from rank and file. We already knew that, but we hadn't really communicated it to rank and file, but they're feeling the same pressures. So we'll kind of go through this worksheet that demonstrates that we are a little bit thin-staffed, and especially with the amount of population growth that we're experiencing every year, we're not really keeping up with that, and we want to kind of maybe not necessarily say that we have to staff up by tons and tons, but start to establish a benchmark of what staffing to keep up with our level of growth should look like. So we've got that in there, and at the appropriate time in the presentation, we'll get there. Dallas and I are going to tag team this. We'll kind of get started going through the presentation. Please interrupt, ask us to slow down and expand on things that you want to have a higher level of detail on as we go through it. And I say we're going to tag team it, but we didn't plan this as well as we normally do, so I'll be kicking him under table when it's time for him to address a slide as it comes up. So first slide deck, and we'll go through this quickly, is simply our budget timeline and process. We show you this at the beginning and end of every budget presentation. So we're currently sitting in our second budget workshop. The next thing you'll see on your calendars is that our next city commission meeting will be setting a preliminary millage rate, kind of akin to what we did last night with the preliminary fire assessment rate. That is the rate that will be published in our trim notices that go out to our residents. It's the max that we could charge without re-advertising. So in the past, this board has said, let's set it a little high, and we can always slide back down to the $5.99 that we're currently at, the staff has proposed, or lower if that's the commission's wishes. But that's a decision that you'll be looking at our next city commission meeting. Next slide. I'm going to let Dallas take the next slide because I got a feeling I'll be talking a lot as we get later into this.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Commissioners. These are our budget guidelines and policies, the same policies and guidelines we've used in the past. As the Commission knows, you've set a policy that we will maintain 2.5 months of operating reserves in our major funds. As of today, we need about $1.5 million in our general fund. We currently hold about $1.8 million in our general fund. As we get further into the budget presentation, you'll see that we have proposed to pull some of those funds forward out of reserves that are above and beyond the emergency reserve to fund the expansion of City Hall. There's about $175,000 we've proposed to pull out of those reserves for the design of the new City Hall. In our budget guidelines, we use one-time revenues to fund one-time expenses. We don't use one-time revenues to pay for ongoing expenses. Obviously, your budget will be balanced, and we will establish fair and equitable rates to balance the budget in your utility funds. We strive every year to develop a diversified and stable revenue system, so we're not completely dependent all on property taxes or one source of revenue. And then, of course, as the manager said, when preparing our budget, we take into account inflation and population increases into preparing those operating budgets so we can maintain the same level of service as we have in previous years.
Back up. Commission considerations, you see this slide every time, and we'll go through each one of these individually and tell you just foreshadowing under revenue diversification. Got a couple other things for the commission to consider. Millage rate is always the commission's choice. We have efforted to maintain a millage rate of 5.999, and the budget that we've balanced does that. Fire assessment adjustment, it could go up to 195. That's what's going to be in our trim notices, so that the commission couldn't exceed that as we go through the budget, and the commission says, hey, we want to do a little bit more, raise a little more revenue to purchase that Quint or second frontline vehicle, then we maybe have those conversations. Under personnel expenses, we want to talk about staffing levels. Those are the handouts that we provided. Potentially doing a compensation study, go through the minimum wage amendment, implications for the city, and a plan that we've developed to help us meet those requirements. And we'll go through our CIP, both renewal and replacement and expansion, and how we could address some of those needs utilizing long-term debt. Law enforcement, you resolved about a month ago, put us into a 5-year contract. The commission won't really have to worry about that for 3.5 years or so. And then finally, we have $2.6 million in ARPA funding that the commission will have an opportunity to determine how best to utilize those funds. So just our standard graph of how we, or display of how we develop our funds or categorize our funds, either governmental or proprietary. The proprietary are those that look more like utilities. Tonight we're going to be discussing the governmental funds, particularly the general fund. Absolutely, anytime.
Manager, have we figured out what the American Rescue Plan Act, what we can or cannot fund yet? Is that in stone?
Yes. The Department of Treasury has not issued its final guidance yet. The federal law that was enacted to provide these funds was fairly clear. There are some gray areas. As more and more guidance comes out, we're getting a better and better idea. On the list of things we've thought about funding, there's only one or two that are maybe on the edge. We have contracted with a consultant who is an expert in is becoming an expert in American Plan Act to guide us. At this time, we do not have any contracts or agreements from the state yet, and we expect that those contracts and those agreements will further clarify what we can and cannot. The items that we have listed, the majority of them very clearly fall within the guidelines of the American Plan Act.
All right, so jumping into this slide, I think it's probably best if Dallas addresses it.
Mr. Mayor and City Commissioners, this is the millage slide. There's no change from our previous workshop. This year's certified gross taxable value is just shy of $550 million, which is a 11.5% increase from last year's certified value of just under $500 million. The Save Our Homes cap is 1.4%. We put that in there to remind the commission that although we've had a large increase in our taxable value, our residents' taxable value can only increase by 1.4% if they are a homesteaded property, which means their values can only go up at 1.4%. So theoretically, their taxes can also only go up 1.4% if all the tax rates stayed the same. The rollback rate is just shy of 5.6. For the new commissioners, the rollback rate is the rate at which would generate the same amount of revenue as the previous year, but would result in a tax reduction for your residents, which is adjusted from your current millage rate of 5.999. As the manager mentioned, your budget's currently built on continuing the same tax rates and no tax change for our residents. And then at the bottom there, you've got a chart as to what a change in each millage rate would do both to the city and to your average homeowner. And this year, your average taxable value in Newberry is about $100,000, which means most of your residents are paying about $50 a month for general government city services. Continuing on with property taxes, everybody gets that big bill from the tax collector's office for $2,000. It's important to remember that that entire amount of tax bill does not come to the city. The city only gets about a quarter of it. About a third of that goes to the county. Another third-ish goes to the school board, and then a few pennies here and there go to the library district, the children's trust, and the water management district. But again, the point we're trying to drive here is that when you pay your tax bill to the tax collector's office, it's not all coming to the city. We're only getting about a quarter of that. In your millage rate comparison, we've added a column to this table, which is the water tax. This shows you where we rank in terms of millage rate compared to our peers and our neighbors. As you can see, we're right in the middle of the pack at a total impact of about 7.1 mils without a water tax. As you see here, the only other community in our area that does not have a water tax is the city of High Springs. This is the same information, but in a graphical form. Again, just to show you that although we're in the middle, there's not a lot of difference between Gainesville and Alachua and us. But we've got three of our neighbors who pay much more in property taxes, and the two on the end pay just a little bit less than we do. Is this me? Sure. All right. As the manager alluded to, in your revenue diversification, we do have two new items here. The first two are items we've discussed previously. You have your utility water tax or your public service tax on water. This is a tax that would be imposed by the city commission on the sale of utility water, potable water within the city. The city commission can adopt up to a 10% tax on the sale of water. That 10% tax would generate about $87,000 and would impact your average customer about $2.70 per month. So that would only
that tax would only go towards people that are on the city water. So it wouldn't affect all the citizens of Newberry.
Correct, Mr. Mayor. That would only be on the sale of water utilities, so those residents who are on private wells would not pay this tax. Theoretically, they'd be paying more in electricity, and there's a tax on electricity, but special assessments, as we've discussed before, the City Commission currently has a special assessment for fire protection. The City Commission can adopt special assessments for a variety of reasons to construct and maintain your capital facilities, such as street improvements, water, wastewater extensions and improvements, and other items. Last year, the Commission directed us to look into a road maintenance assessment or a capital roads assessment. We've been working with our consultant on that. Unfortunately, it's looking like the direction that we were attempting to go to is not an easy one to achieve. It may not be as feasible as we thought it was. In that research, we started discussing changing from a special assessment on road maintenance to more of an impact fee style. Impact fees are one-time fees charged against new development in your community for capital facility costs. Currently, the City Commission has two impact fees. You have an impact fee in your water system and an impact fee in your wastewater system. For when new development connects to your water and wastewater system, they pay a fee that goes towards the construction of additional facilities based off of that growth. So in our discussions about road maintenance and road fees, we have been looking at potentially discussing a road impact fee, which would be paid by new development, new residents to the city. Your existing residents would not pay it unless they built a new home in the city. And those fees that are collected for the impact fees would be earmarked and restricted only towards those projects. So if you adopted a road impact fee, we would legally have to restrict those funds to be spent on roads. And then the last but certainly not least is something that we probably should have had on here all along. I guess we may have thought it was a little easy, but charges for services. Obviously the city charges for a whole bunch of different services. The City Commission can always raise your rates on anything that you charge for. In the general fund, the biggest impact would be raising rates on your solid waste, your building permits, or perhaps your recreation fees. Solid waste is an increase at this point would be pure revenue to the city because we already cover our cost. And building permits we're having a discussion about whether or not we're currently covering our costs or not. That covers revenue diversification.
And just to expound on a couple of those items, on the utility water tax, as Monty pointed out, that that would only affect our water customers, and that in theory, customers that are not connected to our system spend more on energy to operate a well, and we do have utility taxes. We charge utility taxes to all of the electric service providers in the community. So it is rational to consider that in some regards the city's already collecting for those water withdrawals for non-city water customers. The other thing I wanted to point out about that is while that is a tax on a utility service, those revenues don't go into the utility. That is the city that owns a utility or has an authority to tax the utility, issuing a tax against a utility service, and all those revenues come in on the general fund side. So normally when we attach fees to our utility services, we consider those revenues to be going on the utility side of the equation. These utility taxes do not. They come in on the governmental fund or the general fund side. Under impact fees, just as we were discussing that with Dallas this afternoon, we had a project come through for consideration last night that was going to add 41 residential units, and we were concerned about the traffic impacts and whether a turn lane at an intersection would help. And it occurred to me as we're having this conversation to figure out how impact fees, transportation impact fees in particular, might work in the city, that 41 houses, assuming I think the county, for a 2,000 square foot home, the county's transportation impact fee is $4,000. A little rich maybe for our blood, but if we just grabbed a number of $1,000, that would be $41,000 that could be put towards those road improvements that are necessary, or road improvements anywhere, because every new home in town, in theory, puts down, according to our planning studies, puts 10 trips a day on every road in their subdivision. So it's 10 new trips a day. A great thing about impact fees is they're one-time fees. They're not recurring, and they're to new residents that come to Newberry that are going to impart a new impact on our community, and our existing customers or residents have already made those types of investments in the community, and so there's a fairness of it all, that hey, we've paid for these roads to put them in here, but you're about to impact them negatively, and we're asking you to pay an incremental fair share to help us with road. And impact fees could go to other things like law enforcement, could be as broad as public safety. I think the county has one for recreation facilities, and we're not necessarily suggesting that. We're just trying to offer the commission with thoughts and ideas about how they might utilize a fee like this. And as Dallas mentioned, it really was born out of discussion about the special assessment. If we do a special assessment for road maintenance, that really applies to everyone in the district, and it's an annual cost to people that use the road. An impact fee is similar, but it differs in that it's that one-time upfront charge as opposed to an ongoing annual charge.
Okay, so I think this is a slide we want to slow down on, right? Let's see if we can generate some conversation here about these possibilities, because we stopped on this slide on the first, but we had some unanswered questions about the assessments. We were kind of finishing that to see if we could do that. That's not possible, but we do have some other opportunities here. We kind of have this conversation at the beginning of our budget workshops, and none of us want to reach for the mic and say we're willing to have an impact fee, or we're willing to raise some rates over here, or charge this tax. I understand that. But we get to the end of the presentation, and we've got $10 million of projects that we got to pay for, and we're tired of the roads, and we want to pave this, and we want to do that over here. And then somebody reaches for the mic and says, well, where's the money coming from, right? Well, let's have that conversation here and now. Because I mean, I gotta tell you guys, if we're not willing to do anything, then we can make it a real short budget workshop, because we don't need to get any of them capital outlay projects, because there's no money for them. Boom. Question answered, right? But if we agree that City Hall is gonna have to be expanded in the next 5 years, if we think our population is to the point where we need to think about connectivity, like connecting 26th to 15th, so that we have another out, connecting 15th to 337, so that people leaving the elementary school could turn west and not have to come out this way, right? I mean, all of those things are fairly large ticket items that require paving roads, that require some long-term debt. So we can take big chunks, we can take little bites and put them together, but I think we've talked about this utility tax on water. The assessment fee, I don't think we can do it, but, I've heard almost all of us talk about, the problem that the school board is in probably could have been alleviated if they had an impact fee, but they would have had to pass that impact fee 25, 30 years ago in order to have the revenue today. I can see a similar situation for Newberry with our growth rate, where right now we got a lot of people coming. A lot of the things that we are looking to expand is because of the new people coming. So in my mind, that makes some sense to put the burden of take the Quint conversation we had last night. I mean, in terms of that ladder and our ability to go vertical, when we talk about Sandia Park, talk about some of these new developments that are coming, now the Quint's not a nice thing to have an increased level of service. It's a necessary thing for us to possess, right? Well, those are all new developments. If there's a way for us to shift some of the burden for those costs that the new developments are creating to the new developments, I think that's worth the conversation. So a little bit, we could do a little bit on the utility tax. We could do 4 or 5% instead of the whole 10. We could do an impact fee. I mean, I think we could do an impact fee that's specific to roads, and then we could do an impact fee that's specific to public safety, and that could help with fire and police moving forward, right? I mean, I don't think anybody here is necessarily in favor of having a police department today, but 10 years from now, 15 years from now, and we're going to be in the same boat. Where's the money coming from? How are we paying for it? So with that being said, if anyone's willing to reach for the mic and say, I think we should think about one of these or all of these, Commissioner Coleman.
Did you say $4,000 in the city of Gainesville, the impact fee?
I think it's
Or is that
Mr. Mayor,
7 for Alachua County.
Alachua
versus-
County's total impact fee is usually reported around $7,000. We looked at the transportation component, and it's $2,000 per 1,000 square feet. So if you build a 2,000 square foot home in Alachua County, you'd be paying $4,000 in transportation impact fees.
Well, I'm all for the impact fee. We got, you want to come west and live in paradise in the great city of Newberry, and that's where they're all coming, is here. And they're impacting me when I'm trying to drive. Is that really what that means? I mean, when I try to get out and get out of Newberry or whatever. So I think at least $2,000, maybe even more. I mean, that's up to the other guys, but that, especially for the streets. I mean, we got so many, just in the city, the unpaved roads. I mean,
It's embarrassing.
Huh?
It's embarrassing to have
It
unpaved roads
really
in our-
is.
Well, hang on, we got go ahead,
What?
we got $1 million we're gonna be doing right now for our, what's unpaid, right? $1.1 million?
1.3, I believe it is.
That's already assigned to do the internal roads.
No.
It's
one of the capital outlay
It's one of the
projects that's in
capital
In
this.
this budget,
Right.
Yes.
It's not funded.
it's not funded.
Right.
We talked about this last year, though.
We
And
did.
we decided it was a project that all 4 of these projects,
Right.
well, the Southwest 15th came up later, but the urban core roads, connectivity on 15th and City Hall, we had a special workshop last year in our budget process because commissioners had brought forth those ideas and said, why are we have unpaved roads? We had to connect down here, right? So those were the top. There may have been a 4th one there that didn't make the top 3, but those were the 3 that this board generated as high priority ticket items. And we directed staff to go get us more information, which is why we now know it's 1.3, because last time we didn't know a number, we just We need to pave them, it's about $1 million.
What, we're gonna get a grant, part of it?
We are slated to apply for the CDBG grant that on its next cycle, which is anticipated to be next spring. Our consultant indicates that it may not be the slam dunk that we anticipated it would be. It doesn't mean we're not still planning to put it all together and go for the grant. We'll just keep the commission informed of our progress and whether or not that we're getting funded or not.
Well, I mean, you got 30th Avenue that's coming, I mean, you got 30th Avenue here, and
Yeah.
and you got development's gonna be there. We have kicked that can down the road way too long. I'm gonna start right now with an impact fee of at least $2,000, maybe even more than that.
Well, and my understanding of impact fees is we would have to do a study similar to the fire assessment, and they would come back with the ranges. So this is the
Right.
max you could charge, this is what you should be charging, here's the least, you know, they'll give us that kind of information. So I mean, I think what we need to talk about tonight is not so much the specific amount, but are we interested in pursuing an impact fee? And remember, once you have an impact fee, you know, you think 50 years from now, when Newberry is, you know, 20,000 people, if we have the same growth rate, you know, think about the flexibility and the ability that you will give that future government to deal with these same issues. If we'd have done this 10 years ago with all the new development that's coming in, think about the difference in the conversation we'd be having here tonight with all the development that's happened in the past 5 or 6 years. You know, so, I mean, I think so I've heard one commissioner express some interest, Commissioner Farnsworth.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Coleman. I think that we should pursue the impact fees. I'm not in favor of increasing the taxes on the citizens. I'm not in favor of tax on the water. And I'm not in favor of increasing the rate of the fire assessment fee. But like Commissioner Coleman pointed out, we have all these people coming in, we have all these developers that are wanting to develop in this area, and that should be coming off their backs or the new people that are moving in. I don't think it should be on our citizens.
Commissioner Clark?
What, if this is adopted, at what point, who gets the impact fees as of right now, when this budget is adopted? Would it be for the next ground that's broke, or we've had multiple, no, I understand that, but we've had multiple people that already come for approved, will they get part of this?
Impact fees are charged when building permits are pulled or obtained. So it'd take us a bit of time to get through the study and to impose the fee by resolution or by ordinance. And then Dallas was kind of researching the state law that apparently the Florida legislature is putting a few more hurdles in there to make sure cities really want these impact fees when they do them. There's a little bit of a cooling off period, but as soon as the cooling off period ends and this is in effect, the next building permit would.
So, all right, Mike, if we did this, would it take 6 months?
I would imagine that we could have it in place by next spring, 6 months.
So,
6 to 9. I think it's a 90-day cool down period.
Oh, okay.
So there's 3 months right there after you
Well,
adopt it.
It would
I'm
have
just saying-
budgetary impact this year.
it will, but,
Would it be?
and I'm just asking this as an overall, because we've got people that have come before the board to put in these subdivisions.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna hit them. We should have told them right before then.
Well, they haven't sold their
That's kind
lots
of what I'm
yet.
asking.
They haven't sold their lots yet, though.
Okay.
So when they go to sell their lots,
there-
then they'll
There has
adjust.
to
Correct.
be.
Yeah.
And this absolutely, I mean, in all full disclosure, when boards consider these types of impact fees, the people that always oppose them are developers. Because they're speaking for future residents, those residents aren't here. But it is every time a pass-through, no developer missed a penny's worth of profit.
Sure.
It just, instead of selling a $100,000 home, if it's a $1,000 impact fee, it's now a $101,000 home.
We just roll this into their stuff and tell them
Correct.
what's going on and give them an idea.
That is correct.
Okay.
And I mean, it's kind of, when we raise our water rates, you know, residents that hooked on, it's like, well, when I signed on, it was $1 per 1,000 gallons, and now it's going up to $1.05 per 1,000 gallons. The cost of doing business just went up. The other thing I would just tell the commission, if this happens, prior to whatever date it becomes effective, there will be a run on building permits. Every entity that has ever imposed an impact fee, you'll see how home builders show up with 15 building permits trying to get in under the wire, but that's fine. I mean, that's within the rules of the game. It's just it's a known phenomenon that we should anticipate that we'll see a run on building permits the day before the new impact fee would go into effect.
But, I mean, I think when we think about impact fees, we're really thinking long-term future. I mean, it's gonna have a budgetary impact this year. It'll have a budgetary impact every year that it goes into effect. But like 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, think about the struggles that we're gonna have and the ability for that board to look back and say, thank you guys for seeing the growth that was coming and putting the onus of the services that new growth was creating on the new growth, not on the backs of the existing residents who arguably have already paid their share of those roads and those services. Mike, we grow. Yeah, we grow. We build 100 to 125. We issue 100 to 125 building permits.
Correct. Last 3 years, that's been our average.
Let's just, hypothetically speaking, nobody freak out on this, hypothetically speaking, say it's a $2,000 impact fee, which would put us $4,000 under Jonesville, which is one of the reasons why those developers come to us, because they can do it for $7,000 cheaper here than they can there. Well, they'll still do it for $4,000, $5,000 cheaper here if it was $2,000, and that would be a $400,000 increase. Well, most of the projects that we have in front of us, we could probably cover or get pretty close to with a $400,000 infusion to be able to carry the debt service. So when we get to those kinds of projects and we say, where's the money coming from? Well, a lot of those projects are infrastructure, they're roads, they're all kinds of things. I mean, if we could pass one that was, again, hypothetically speaking, $2,000 on building permits and, you know, $250 on public safety, you know, we'd still be well below everybody. But think about the benefit, because our law enforcement contract comes out of our millage rates, right? One of the reasons why our millage rate is 5.99 is because we're spending 1.7 of it on law enforcement, right? So if we could get a little help there. We've just put a big infusion of cash into fire department. We got another big decision to make. It'd be a lot easier decision to make if we had a little bit more diverse revenue. And again, I think the Quint's a good example, because the reason I think it's probably imperative that we have a Quint, whether you guys buy a new one or a used one, different question, is because of the new development, right? At Sandia Park, they've got a 5-story
The discussion
hotel.
of 4 to 5 story hotels, what's intended.
And you know, those are the kinds of developments that are coming.
And
So,
there was a senior living facility that you passed a resolution on. It's been a little over a year ago. They were seeking some sort of a grant funding opportunity. That was a 5-story senior facility that was planned near Hitchcock's here in town. So that type of development, I won't say it's going to become our main development, but that we're going to see things. I mean, in town center, there are already three-story facilities there.
so I've heard 3. Commissioner Coleman?
Is 235, do we maintain any of that? That's all county, right?
Okay, correct.
That's a scary.
But I tell you, that we haven't mentioned that, but I also think, you know, Alachua County has an impact fee, and every time we talk about road maintenance, they throw that in our face, right? That we have an impact fee to pay for roads, and you guys just let all this rampant growth, and you're not generating any money to pay for it, right? I mean, we've never had any money to partner with them on things, but if we had an impact fee that was going to road maintenance, we'd have some possibilities, some options to partner with the county and say, Okay, we've got an $8 million road that needs to be fixed, and part of it's yours and part of it's us. We've got $1 million. Will you do your $7 million part, or whatever the numbers are? I'm just being hypothetical. But right now, we don't have anything. We've got our gas tax, which our gas tax is falling farther and farther. Even with
Yeah.
our renegotiation, I drive a Prius. I get 50 miles to the gallon. I'm only filling up once every 2 weeks.
Part of the problem.
I heard y'all had a gas crisis. I didn't even know. Commissioner Maison, you have any thoughts on this? I didn't.
I'm learning still.
All right,
Another question.
Being honest,
Mr. Farnsworth.
So the impact fees, do they just go into the general fund to be spent wherever is necessary?
Mr. Mayor, no, sir. Just like your impact fees you have in your water and wastewater fund, they are accounted for separately and held separately in separate bank accounts to only be expended on those things that have been authorized by the city commission through its ordinances. So in your water wastewater funds, we can only spend your impact fees on expansion and enhancement of the system. So we only spend those funds on that, and your auditors audit that every year.
So let's say that we get like a, I don't know, $2,000 fee. Can that be split up and like part of it go towards roads and part of it go towards the fire department and part of it go towards something else?
Yes,
Can we
yes, sir,
do that?
Mr. Mayor. Technically, you'd have separate impact fees, but you could make the totality be $2,000 and say 1,500 goes to roads and 250 goes to parks and 250 goes to public safety, and we would account for that all separately.
And can that be changed at any time?
I don't
If we
think so.
decide, well, we need more money for roads, can we,
You can change the impact fee, yes, sir. You can raise your impact fees. This year, the state
can we
legislature.
reallocate it? Well, I'm asking, not,
Yes, sir,
raise-
I believe so.
In the resolution. You couldn't just, in a commission meeting,
Right.
do it, but you could rewrite the resolution to change the allocation.
Okay.
The legislature continues to adopt more and more stringent laws on impact fees. So there's a current law that was just signed into law not too long ago. It says you can only increase your impact fees by 12.5% a year. So we'd have to stay within those confines, but ultimately the commission would have the authority to reallocate it or readjust it as it needs to.
okay, so Gainesville has an impact fee, Alachua County has an impact fee, do other cities?
Not in Alachua County, I think Gainesville,
Correct.
but other cities around us, absolutely.
And
All of
if,
them.
if you get into Central Florida area where, all those smaller cities, Mount Dora, going west of, Orlando, that are just growing like banshees, every one of them has some, I shouldn't say every one, the majority of them, Fruitland Park, they have some sort of an impact fee.
What about locally, though?
Locally, Alachua County and Gainesville that I'm aware of, none others in our county.
But I would
But
venture,
nobody's growing like we are.
right,
Mm,
I would
that's
venture to
true.
guess if the city of Alachua didn't have 3 distribution centers in it, right? They would have
And
to, they'd have to
I-75.
figure something, and they didn't have I-75, they'd have to figure something else out too. So we are the city that's growing. When you think about our geographical size, how many square miles we are, I mean, that's why my brain is 50 to 100 years from now, because the city of Newberry is the only city in Alachua County that could potentially ever at some point in time rival Gainesville in terms of size and population. Every other city is pretty well contained in terms of, especially now with the GMA, right? But we have a vast land base around us, and I think that's another reason why developers are flocking to us, because we're one of the last ones that have land. Right? If I want to do a 600 development, I need 10 acres ain't gonna cut it. I need some space. Okay, so I've got 3 commissioners who want to pursue an impact. I've heard one commissioner not have any interest in anything else on this. I mean, I think if we're really willing to pursue an impact at the size that you're talking about, we can make some progress without. My general philosophy is better to take little bites out of a lot of different places than one big bite out of one. So is there anyone else here, anything else on this sheet of paper that anyone is interested in pursuing? I mean, we've got pretty good numbers on the utility tax. Charges for services, that's kind of a vague, I mean, what are we thinking about there? Because most of the charges for services that we have, we've already expressed an interest in an index increase in those so that we don't end up saying this year we got to increase our water prices by 20% because we haven't done it forever, right? So are we thinking about something obviously beyond just an index increase across the board, raise the rates by 2%, 2.5%?
I'll take first crack at it. Things like solid waste fee, we have our costs from our contractor, we add a nominal, I think it's 10% surcharge, is that where we're at today? But then we offer substantially the lowest rate in the region, and, you know, we've actually taken quite a bit of pride in that. But if it wasn't $1.50 a customer that we were making, if it were $2.50 a customer or $3.50 a customer, we'd still have a competitive solid waste rate. It's just an additional revenue stream that diversifies us and keeps us competitive with our peers, because, you know, we would be looking at the market and making sure that our solid waste rates aren't outpacing anyone else. In the building department, our building officials identified that, you know, our fees for a building permit on a brand new home are at market. We have a number of fees that he feels like are just low. We lose money. We pull a $70 permit for something that requires 3 or 4 hour and a half long inspections. And we just haven't looked at it because at the end of the day, it's kind of a lower number. But he's identified to us that, hey, while you're where you need to be for a couple of your major development items, you are way below market, and we're losing money in these areas. Now, building department funds are earmarked to stay within the building department, but the building department operates on building department fees plus general fund revenues, tax dollars. So if the building department increases its building fees, then those general fund revenues are then available to be reallocated to other departments where the commission would like to see those dollars spent. So those are
Mike,
some examples of charges for service.
Let me ask a follow-up question there. Do we have a general sense, I know Brian's not here tonight, of, I think when we hear building permits, we're back in thinking new development, but we do a lot of building permits that are add-ons, those kinds of things. I mean, since what we're really thinking about here is the new development and the stress it's putting on the city, is there a way to isolate those building permits that are other things associated with cost to the city? Because, you know, our philosophy has been every department kind of needs to pay for itself, maybe with the exception of Parks and Rec, because it's about the kids, right? But everybody else sort of, you know, our wastewater needs to break even, you know, and fund depreciation. Our electric needs to break even and fund depreciation. Our building department, I don't think, breaks even, which means that we have to supplement it from the general fund, which again means we have fewer dollars to spread to these other projects because they have to go there. Do we have an idea of a percentage of building permits? 70% are new development buildings, 30% are existing residents changing something, adding on, or no?
The majority of our building permits are not for new construction. They're additions and those sorts of things. We do, I'd mentioned before, we do 125 new home starts a year on average. We issue right at 500 building permits a year. The majority of those are over the counter. I'm putting in a new air conditioning system, you know, and so they're pretty limited. I think what our building revenues are, I don't think it would be dramatic, but at this stage of the game, you know, I think rather than trying to find a $250,000 golden egg, what we're doing is cobbling $8,000, $10,000 here, $25,000 there, so that we can put it all together and have $100,000 to go towards some debt service payment, as the way I see where this conversation is going.
Mr. Mayor, to the building permit discussion, the way we charge building permit fees is not a one fee makes your building permit. There's 10 or 15 different fees that go into it. There's how much is a new construction, how much is it to get a 911 address, how much is it, you know, all these different inspection fees. So your building official is currently working on addressing those individual inspection fees. So you could raise the rates of just your new construction permit fees, which obviously wouldn't affect those people who are putting in a fire system or a pool. In my conversations with your building official, though, his concern is, I believe our current inspection cost for a new pool permit is $78, but it takes us 5 inspections to go do a building permit for a pool. And clearly $78 is not covering our costs to go inspect a pool 7 or 5 times. So we're looking at those sorts of things, nothing super dramatic, but just making sure we are covering our costs. And then to circle back to the impact fees, in 2019, according to the Department of Revenue, out of the 413 cities in the state, 209 of them were collecting an impact fee of some kind. The ones in our area, aside from ourselves, that currently collect impact fees would be the city of High Springs and the city of Chiefland and Ocala.
Okay, I don't feel like we're actually prepared to have a good conversation on the fees for service. But it's gonna take some staff time to come back and say, these are the targeted areas and this is the revenue that it would generate. So, and we're limited in terms of staff time. So if no one is interested in increasing any charges for fees of service, then we move on. But if that's something we're interested in, then I would say, staff, go back and, let's take a little bit here and a little bit there, and let's see what some numbers are. Commissioner Coleman.
Well, the staff's really good at showing us compared to the peers,
Right.
and that's what I want to see. I mean, are we just like that right there on the pool?
Yeah.
I mean, and not only that, all that, are compared to the other municipalities and stuff. And I don't mean to say it like leaving money on the table, but some of that stuff is, we're not, it's tough if we start losing money making 5 inspections.
Right.
So,
Well, I don't think that other taxpayers should supplement that employee's salary to go out.
right,
Spend taxpayer gas 5 times, spend 4 or 5 hours of staff time. And now we've in essence all paid a little bit of that pool permit. So I think in my mind, it's a no-brainer to say we need to make sure that all the permits are covering the cost of the work that's being done there. But I also think that's a pretty big project to sit there and go through every kind of permit and figure out, all right, how much time does it actually take me on a pool permit? And let me see what
Yeah.
we're charging. So I don't want to put staff through that if at the end they come back and we say, we don't want to raise any rates, right? So if that's a palatable time to put our staff through, absolutely. What do we think? I'm not arguing in favor. I'm asking, do we want to go back and ask them to spend 5 to 10 hours putting together a presentation on this? Commissioner
Well-
Farnsworth and then Commissioner Coleman, he's been waiting.
Yeah, I mean, I would like for them to present us with that, and I think that, like you said, and like Commissioner Coleman says, I mean, we need to be charging the people that are putting in pools or building whatever they're building, they need to be paying for the cost of it instead of the other citizens supplementing the cost of, so I think we do need to have the staff bring us back some presentation regarding these fees.
Commissioner Coleman and Commissioner Clark? He's got it, Commissioner Clark.
Yeah, and I'll just caveat on that. The staff don't need to spend tons of time on it. If your building inspector says it takes 4 times,
Yeah.
he knows 4 times $60, and that's the fee. We don't
Yeah.
need to spend tons of time going out and looking for consultants and getting all kinds of information back to us. I think this is a common sense approach to what it's going to cost, and if it's 3 times what it is, then let's just say it.
Yeah, I agree. I don't need to know that it cost us, $178.46. If it's $175, it's $175, and if it's $3 is where that way, that's a different thing. I don't need that level of precision, right? Dallas?
Mr. Mayor, from my conversations with our building official, we are not spending an inordinate amount of time. What we've done is kind of average and estimate our average cost for an inspection. And so let's say that's $70, and if it takes 5 inspections, 5
There
times
you
the
go.
average cost equals what?
That's the common sense approach to this instead of wasting.
So we got a head nod for charges for services. We're going to do some study, and we'll bring that back. We've got 3 that have said we need to pursue impact fees and we'll get more data on that. I still have only heard one person on the utility tax.
I'm against.
Now, hang on one second,
Okay.
because the general argument that I've heard against utility tax goes back to the fact that only the people on the utility pay it. And this is my concern about utility tax as well, because it's a tax. It's not a fee. It's not a permit. So you can't earmark it. You can't ensure that it's only going to go to things that people who are paying the tax would benefit from, right? So I get that, and it's a hesitancy of mine as well. Mike, is there any way to overcome that critique? Because that's where we always hang up on this one. And we're not talking about a lot of money here. So if it was 5%, you'd be talking about $1.35 a month. But $40,000 when we're trying to crack a $400,000 debt service or $450,000 debt service, well, $40,000 helps, right? That gets us there, right? So is there a way to address that concern, or is there just no way to address that concern? And we need, because I would say at this point, as long as you're looking at these 5 faces, we need to stop putting the utility tax even on the slide. Because if we can't address that concern, I don't think we're going to ever get anywhere from it. Let's just move
Mr.
on
Mayor,
from it.
impact fees are highly regulated statutorily. If the city of Newberry decides to spend impact fees whimsically, any property owner can and would bring suit. It happens pretty frequently in the state of Florida, and they would successfully win that suit. Utility taxes are not statutorily regulated, but that doesn't prevent the city commission from setting a policy. We statutorily don't have to have a policy of keeping 2.5 times our average month reserves in general fund. This board decided that was a good policy, and that's what we put in place. So if the commission says, hey, Mike, we want all water tax to be spent on the fire department because they need a good, strong water system, and they spend time and energy making sure that those hydrants and that water system supports them. That's one way. You could just set an internal policy and say we want our water taxes allocated to whatever. It could be recreation. You have that latitude. But if you want that nexus about we want our water tax to be applied to something within our city that is a rational nexus to the people that are paying it, then that's within the board's control. You're not statutorily regulated or required to do any of that.
Mr. Mayor, to follow up on that, the commission has the authority in almost any of its revenues to adopt ordinances that commit those funds to a specific project or area. Obviously, the commission can unadopt its own ordinances, but it is a process. And in adopting those ordinances, it would require your auditors to report to you every year if we were spending those in an area that was not appropriate in accordance to the ordinance. And in addition, if the commission wants to forever ensure, for quite some time ensure that we're only spending it a certain way, you could always bond those revenues. And bonding those revenues and putting debt against those revenues would bind the hands of a future commission until those debts are paid off.
Okay, so we can pass a resolution and say we will do a percentage water tax, but those monies generated can only be spent on X. That way we assure that the service is going. We can bond it.
Do you mean, I think that if you're paying a water tax in Newberry, it needs to benefit Newberry, not 30th Avenue, 30th, 48. I mean, see, that's
Right.
that's what, if the folks in the city want it, I mean, get it, that they need to be the benefit.
That's good.
Yeah.
Could you bond the money and then spend that money on roads?
Yes, sir.
So you could bond the money and say we'll spend that money on our urban road repavement program. We'll pass the tax for a 10-year period of time. That's going to generate X amount of dollars, right? And we bond the money and we put that towards. That sounds like an awful lot to go through, actually, for $40,000 a year. But I mean, it does answer what has been the primary reason to pass over this option is we can't figure out a way to make sure those dollars are only benefiting the people who are paying the dollars.
Mr. Mayor, bonding $40,000 would roughly get you about $1 million. You know.
Well, that's the urban, that's what we need over there,
Exactly.
you know.
And Southwest 15th Avenue, reconstruction
Probably
to
gonna be
accommodate
about-
parking is also gonna look like about $1 million.
So, I mean, you know, we haven't really, every year.
It's not a big amount of money. It just looks like we're trying to tax somebody else, we're taxed to death.
Right.
I'm not against getting the $2.70 per person.
Right.
That ain't a lot of money. We can all do this to make our city better. It's just the tax. It's just everything we do is tax, tax, tax. So I'm not against totally, is there any other way to generate on those, that we can spend money like that to gain $2 or $2.50 per person?
Another charge,
And a tax?
well, another charge per service would be solid waste. If the commission said we're gonna increase our solid waste fees by $1 a month per residential unit, that would raise $30,000 a year. That would tax tax or increase a fee to the entire city, because,
That'd be the entire city, like,
Correct.
I was still on it too.
correct,
That's everybody.
yeah.
Our contract requires that Waste Pro matches our rates. So,
I mean, that generally, that's how I prefer to do things. 50 cents here, $1 there, right? And then $30,000 doesn't sound like a lot, $40,000 doesn't sound, but you put 2 or 3 of those together.
But I'm just saying, Mr. Mayor, that the way we're talking about this water tax is still internal to the city. This waste up in the charge by $1 or $1.50 encompasses everybody in the city limits,
Right.
not just your core.
Correct.
But if we bonded the money for the urban core, then only the urban core would receive the benefit of
Well,
that bonded
eventually,
money.
we're all going, all the roads, 15th's coming. It ain't in the urban core, it's coming though.
No, but what I'm saying is you would bond the money specifically
For this?
for that, and then you'd say, okay, that utility tax is bonded, it's gonna be the urban core. Urban people pay it, urban people receive the benefit.
We just couldn't use it on roads, period.
No, the utility fees, we could use, a utility tax we could use any way you want.
Right.
But
That,
not up in the,
I think,
on the waste.
We could
Yeah.
use the utility tax, and what we're talking, we could, if we wanted to, we just tax it and say there's $40,000 in general fund, use it however we want it. That's been the stumbling block, so no, because only certain people are paying that, right?
Right.
The waste, solid waste pickup, we would all pay it, so we should all get a benefit from it. But the problem with the special assessment for the roads came when we tried to say, well, we can't pass a special assessment on this guy out here for roads and then fix that road over there, because ostensibly he may never drive it, he's not
Correct.
receiving the benefit of it, right? You know, again, for me, the charges for service, that's just to let's level everything out and make sure we're charging people what we should be charging. I think the impact fee probably gets us a long way to where we need to get to, but, Monty, you've been through this, and Ricky, you've been through this. When you try to jump, when you realize that you've kicked the can down the road on water costs for 10 years, because you didn't want to raise anybody's rates by 30 cents. Well, that wasn't a lot that year,
really.
but added up 10 years, and now I got to increase your charge by 20%, and then City Hall is full of people upset, right? So I think it's generally better to raise a little bit here and a little bit there and piece it together, because it just kind of spreads out the pain. Otherwise, we get into we're going to raise the millage rate, right? Because we got to expand City Hall, we got to do this, we got to do that. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, an increase in solid waste can also be attributed to the wear and tear that the solid waste haulers put on our
On the
roads,
road.
similar to your franchise fees.
And if we wanted to say we're going to put $1 on the waste, do we have to go through the whole bonding thing in order, because that everyone's paying. So we would know whatever road we spent that on, we would all be receiving that benefit. The utility tax is different because not everybody's paying it. So we could increase that one and just run with knowing that we're going to use that money on roads the utility tax, we'd have to put it into some sort of writing to ensure that we did what we said.
Correct, Mr. If the city commission wanted to bind the hands of future commissions in order to not spend utility tax on something else, you'd have to bond it. You could also do that probably with a solid waste fee, but like you said, there's not as much of an impetus to do that because the entire city's paying it.
Okay.
No.
Go ahead, Bonnie.
Our solid waste rates are extremely low compared to other facilities, correct?
Real low.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, especially considering that Newberry has twice-week collection.
Well, and if you go back to the slide about the water, I mean, all those that, we're the only one that's not, besides High Springs, not charging anything, all the rest of them are at 10%, right? Bronson's at 5%, LaCrosse is at 6%, every other city, Trenton's at 10%. Trenton is at
We
10%.
could consider that to Mike New do it, sitting down with the door closed. Remember that? With Waste Pro.
Oh,
I'm glad I wasn't in that
Yeah.
room.
That was good negotiation.
All I know is,
What is the difference? Just give me an idea of difference in waste, cost. What Newberry
Latchwood's
is
at
versus-
$24 a month, we're at 17.
I'm looking them up right now, Mr.
Something
Mayor.
like that. So,
Presentation, I believe if you're in unincorporated Alachua County, you're hopping right at 25 a month. Gainesville's probably in that area.
yeah,
I think Alaska's probably closer to 20. I think last I heard.
I think it was 22, but, and we're 17, 16. Yeah. I mean, here's what I would propose, because we're still a man down, right? And we're talking about, but let's, because it's 8 o'clock already, and we're
Mr.
on
Mayor.
page 12.
High Springs
Take
is,
a little chunk here and
A little chunk here, a little chunk
I'm
there.
saying, it ain't hurting, and I got it, but I'm just still
Right.
hung up on the tax deal.
Yeah.
But don't get me wrong, we could probably talk about it so we can move forward. And even if we were talking about this utility tax, I mean, I'm just, for me personally, maybe half of that, which is gonna be a 5%.
Right.
And then we get a little chunk down here on our solid waste, we get a couple dollars.
And
That
that-
would give us, now
yeah.
where are we at? Cause we've got a balanced budget already.
And
What
that's
are we
what I
gonna do
want
with
to
this
see.
money?
That's what I want. Let's say to staff, take a little chunk here and there, and show us how much that is.
And
And
where
I
we
think
gonna use it.
where we're going to use it is 20 more pages into this slide deck, right? On City Hall expansion, connecting that road. We got 4 projects that all are worthy of consideration, but all 4 of them together are about $10 million. So that's where it's going to go to. One of those projects, 2 of those projects, 3, or all 4. Commissioner Coleman?
well, you need to understand, when I got in here, 10 years ago, we spent time saying, we gotta cut the pork, we gotta cut some of this fat, and we did it. We did a real good, we might have done too good of a job.
24% over 4 years.
Yes. So what I'm getting at here is that the things that so far we've discussed tonight are our services.
Yeah.
And we get, and for us to be able to handle this, the tax, we might have to go up with taxes. I mean, that's just the way it is. But it's not going to a bunch of pork crap. It's going to services in the city of Newberry. So I just want to make that point. I mean, if we were sitting here and we were discussing about building a city bowling alley or something,
Different
then we're
thing.
going back to where we were 10 years ago.
That's next.
That's next.
Bonnie?
I agree with you. But on the other hand, anytime you have a tax and you use it to pave the roads or you use it for something else, and once that stuff is paid for, you still have the tax. It never goes away. It's always coming in. So I think we just need to be mindful that
And,
that's not just hey, okay, we're going to tax everything
And I'm right.
and bring all this big old money in. Just we need to make sure that
It goes away.
yeah.
Mr. Mayor, is there, when you do something like that, is there, what the staff
We
talking
could-
about, we say it's bonded, 15
And
years
then
down the road, when that
sunset.
thing's paid for, that goes away and the new commission has to.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can absolutely sunset it. I mean, I also think, you know, the conversations that I have with you guys, right, is we've had a storm, there's a tree out here, why aren't we out here fixing it? When are we gonna repave, we're gonna resurface this road, right? So part of me always feels a little hypocritical when I'm talking to the county and their issues, because we got the same issues, right? And we have the same core problem. We don't have any money because we've cut everything down to just core services, and we've created the VERF program so that we have depreciation. We can replace our vehicles. We've funded our depreciation in all of our departments. But what we haven't done is we do not fund depreciation of our roads, which is why we don't have any money to fix the roads. We haven't funded depreciation of our buildings, which is why we just had to spend $700,000 on the fire station, and why we're looking at spending a couple $1 million on this, and we haven't put any money aside for those. So while I absolutely think, yeah, you can sunset it, our growth rate and the people that are coming, I don't see the issues that we're having going away. So I don't want to, we can sunset it, and I would adhere to that if I said it, if that's what we voted on. But I don't want to mislead our residents, because we are the fastest growing city in this county, and the issues that we're having, I don't see going away. And I think part of that, again, is because we're so much cheaper, and I think that's a good thing. But it comes a point, if they're charging $7,000 impact fee, you could go all the way up to $6,500. It's still cheaper to build in Newberry, right? So at what point, how much cheaper do we have to be when it's beginning to affect our quality of life? Because we don't have any money to get Country Way residents to 30th so they can get out the back. We don't have the ability, especially now that the railroad shut down that crossing, we don't have the ability to get people from 26th down to 15th so that I can go out that way if I need to, right? So we've got a lot of really great ideas about how to make the city of Newberry better. It's always, where's the money gonna come from? So I'm all in favor of doing, or at least seeing some data on some bonding and some sunsets, and how long we have to bond that money to get $1 million so we can do these roads over here. That takes one of these projects out. We don't have to worry about going out and looking for grants, because we've solved it internally, right? Now we can go look for a grant for another problem, because grants, we can only have so many of them open at a time, and it takes time to write and go after those too. Dallas?
Mr. Mayor, I have some information on solid waste rates. To my knowledge, the city of Newberry is the only community that offers twice a week pickup. High Springs is $22 a month. City of Alachua is $18.60 a month. City of Gainesville is $37 a month. And Alachua County is $27 a month for the same size cart, but only once a week pickup.
And we're twice a week, and how much?
$16.50.
Yeah.
So Dallas, can we set up a GoFundMe for the city of Newberry and just call these people short?
Absolutely, Commissioner.
Okay, so what I've heard is, staff, we want you to go do some heavy research on impact fees, right? We want to get that ball rolling, and at some point, that's going to have to come back for a vote, because we're going to have to expend money on the study, right? We'd like you to do some back of the napkin, make sure we're covering our costs, especially, I think across the board in terms of the city, except, again, for Parks and Rec, that's a different thing. I don't think Parks and Rec should have to break even, because the only way they break even is by charging kids more money, right? Yeah. Thanks. And then we would like you to piece together for us what is a 4% utility, or a 5%, or a 6%, coupled with a $1 or $2 increase here, and whatever else you can come up with, and give it to us in a chart, so that we're not just seeing $30,000 and saying, well, what are we going to do with 30? We said, well, if you do all 4 of these things, you get 120, and then now we can make the debt service. And then we can say, well, let's do 3 of them, but not that other one. Is that pretty much the consensus up here? Is that going to get us to page 13? Okay, now we do have one member of the public here, so let's pause and see if our public would like to respond, have any thoughts about anything that she's heard in this conversation on revenue diversification. Would you like that opportunity, Ms. Gale? Yeah. Please come on down to the podium. Yeah, well, you make sure that microphone on, sometimes it's kind of hard to get it to turn green.
As I was listening, it had been brought to my attention once before, and I don't know, as far as our facilities, how many out-of-towners rent our facilities for use? And the person that was talking to me said there were a lot, and they didn't think that the outsiders should pay the same as in town, the resident, that their fee should be higher. So,
I agree with that.
Are you referring to,
Ms. Watson, are you referring to recreation or facility rentals or both?
well,
Good.
I was specifically speaking to the facility rentals,
Okay.
or the parts,
We, on the facility rentals program, we don't have a differential rate for residents or non-residents. That's a pretty easy thing for us to do. I would say that there's some gaming of that when you do that, in my experience. Then I get my buddy who lives here to rent it for me. Some of the free the free rentals that we offer, that happens. I think when you're staffed, the best thing to try to do is just don't get worked up about that. If people are going to put that much energy into taking advantage of a system, you just accept it, word of honor. But we could certainly do that, and it would increase our revenues, because some folks, they just get it and they say, yeah. I mean, we've had a number of these of our municipal building rentals coming from Williston recently. I'm certain that some of the people that are participating in or attending these bodies may be from Newberry, but there's likely we would increase our revenues, and that's something that we should identify in this. Charges for service on the and just recognize we couldn't capture 100%. On the recreation side, it is more of a challenge. One, because there's more gaming of the system, but two, some of the grant money we get from the county through the Wild Spaces program forbids us from doing that. If they're putting county dollars in to our multi-purpose fields, that we can't do that, and then we have to start segregating, well, which sports use the facilities that were funded through a county grant program. So again, not to say we couldn't do it. We would operate on an honor system where, you give us a street address, we plug it into the system. If you're a city resident, we check you. And you pay $40, and if you're a non-city resident, you pay $50. But we do have on recreation facilities or recreation charges, we do have that challenge of what do we do about facilities that were funded through a county grant program. Great question, though.
Ms. Gale, before you walk away, do you have any thoughts on impact fees, up in service charges just a little bit here and there? Do you have any feedback on that? I don't want to put you on the spot, but
Well,
it's good to hear from the public when you guys show up to these meetings.
yeah. I'm like Commissioner Clark. I don't like taxes, but I know it takes taxes to survive. So, the smaller the taxes, the more comfortable I am with it. But it was interesting to hear the Waste Pro, what we are paying and what other people are paying. So I wouldn't have a big problem with that. But yeah, keep the taxes as low as possible.
So you would be in favor of the impact fees because those would be new folks coming in.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, from most of the what I consider, sort of old core Newberry residents, the biggest concern lately has been the influx. Not that we don't welcome everybody wants to honor us by joining our community, but a lot of the things that we're having to do is because of the influx. So in my mind, the impact kind of balances that
Makes
out.
sense. Makes sense to me.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I appreciate you being willing to share that feedback with us.
Thank you.
Mike, take us to page 13.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, this is just a table that shows, this page 13, just shows who is charging water utility tax and what that tax rate is. So within Alachua County, there are just two of us that are not, that's us in High Springs. And you know, one thing, not to be a big advocate for it, the one thing, for whatever revenue it generates, it does have a millage rate equivalent. The other cities that charge a utility tax, when they boast a millage rate that is a few tenths or hundredths lower than ours, you know, and they're comparing our millage rate, we should always, as long as we're not charging utility tax, saying, you know, yeah, but we don't charge that utility tax that you're paying. I think we should get credit for it, or you should get credit for it if we don't do it. Or conversely, if probably 400 cities in the state charge the tax. So if you're just one of all them, and then you're just looking at comparing millage rate for millage rate against millage rate, that's been something that we've struggled with over the years, and it's been kind of a discovery process along the way that we've fought to get our millage rate competitive with everyone else, and then realized that, well, their revenue streams are more diverse than ours, and so when we charge the same millage rate as them, we're just operating on a lot leaner budget than they are because they got other revenue streams coming in.
Yeah, I know we got a lot to talk about tonight, but this is a really good point, because I get into it friendly with folks over there in Trenton, and I said, well, we don't have 2.5 millage rate. You know, you guys have 5.99. But Trenton, you don't have fire, you don't have police service, right? And if you add up fire and police, just those two, we're probably not 4 mills, but we're heading that way. We're at 3.5, 3.7. So you think that the city of Newberry, if you take away those two, we're down, you know, to 2.8, 2.6. So we're running the same millage rate as Trenton, and Trenton's got a population of 1,500.
Yes.
Right? I'd say that's pretty doggone good, right? And it is, in my mind, I don't think that people are opposed to paying taxes. I think they're opposed to their tax money being wasted. As long as I'm getting a good service for my money, I might still gripe, but at least I can see where money's going. And that's where I think, I agree with Commissioner Coleman, that's where we've got to now, is people feel like, okay, my taxes are going to where they should be going to. I'm seeing the service that is being spent on. Okay, personnel? Did I jump ahead of you?
No, you got perfectly. Mr. Mayor, we share this slide every time some of the bullet points change, but we like to highlight every component of our general fund budget. So the Florida retirement system increases, they've already been reported to us. They go up every year, but this year's increase is minimal. Health insurance increases is never minimal. We've budgeted 10%. The balance budget that we have before you right now includes a health insurance increase estimated at 10%. That will not be finalized until August, I think 45 days before the new budget years when we get our final rates and we lock in there. Compensation, Mr. Mayor, we've currently incorporated a program for merit increases that is kind of tied to the minimum wage amendment. I think Dallas Road, and then I shared with you a plan that we had put together. It was kind of an inverse tiered plan to help us move employees that were below the $15 mandate up to 15 over a period of time, kind of reflective of the states. The way it works is those lower waged employees would get I believe a 50% increase, 50-cent increase, but their merit scale would be less than the next tier of employees that would get a 25-cent increase and a little bit broader merit scale, and the third tier of employees would get no increase but have the broadest level of merit increase. So we have programmed into this balanced budget merit increases of up to 4% for employees that are not affected by the minimum wage amendment, up to 5%, and up to 3% for employees that are affected by the minimum wage amendment, plus a 50-cent per hour increase for those. So that plan, we didn't distribute that plan tonight. We can resend that email that kind of outlines how that is, and just to remind everybody, that was passed by the voters of the state of Florida. So it's an amendment to the state's constitution. That wasn't a bright idea that occurred at our local government or at our state government. It's something that the voters of Florida felt was important. Mr. Mayor, we have pitched a compensation and wage scale study. We spoke with the commission about that at the first budget meeting, and talked about what the benefits of that could be. We've also been talking about COLA raises. And this board hasn't done COLA raises since I've got there, but most of the consultants that come in and speak with us about compensation ask us, what is the rationale behind that, and recommend that we should offer some sort of COLA opportunity. And so in looking at a COLA opportunity, we think that we could offer a 2% COLA adjustment married in with our merit increase, and for the same amount of money that a compensation study would cost the city. And while I firmly believe that a compensation study is necessary, it is one of those things I think that we could defer for a year and go ahead and take money that we were planning to spend on finding out if our employees were making a fair wage, and just pushing it straight to our employees to help them improve their wages. We've done, as I'd mentioned before, we've done some just local cost comparison or wage comparisons. I think by and large we're not missing the boat too far. We don't have the time nor the skill set necessary to do an in-depth wage and compensation study, but again, that's probably a program that we would be just as well to defer for a year if we thought we could help our employees out with just across the board COLA increase this year. And just to mention, COLA is a cost of living adjustment. It makes sure that whatever you made this year, it's supposed to kind of follow inflation. So whatever you're bringing home today, as the cost of gas goes up, and as the cost of milk goes up, and as the cost of bread goes up, you have just as much buying power today as you had a year ago. We're not trying to give anybody raises out of it or more money. We're just trying to keep them steady with the rate of inflation. So staff has discussed that a number of years, and we are pitching that we couple that with this minimum wage amendment and offer employees an across-the-board COLA increase this year.
Mike, you're taking that compensation classification study off?
Correct. We think that it's about an even trade, cash-wise, dollars-wise, expense-wise. There you go, and there's a copy of our.
Let's get the money in our employees' pockets.
I'm with you.
Right.
All
All
about
right.
that. Studies we can make our own studies. We make good
All right.
decisions.
So we believe that keeps us at a balanced budget. And then I also mentioned to you that one of our elected officials suggested that we offer a tuition reimbursement program to our employees. We did a little quick and dirty survey. There's definitely interest. We had 15 straight out of the gate said we would participate. So we have plugged $15,000 annually into that. I don't think the take rate necessarily would be that high. It's one thing to be interested, another thing to make a commitment. And it probably wouldn't begin to cover full freight and board. But right now, if you're trying to go to 2 classes a semester, paying full freight, if the city can defray those costs by a third or by half, that's a big benefit to our employees, and there's certainly interest in that. So we think that program has a lot of value for our employees. I think that there seems to be some excitement about it, and happy to say that we've been able to fund it at that level if the commission supports us in that.
Let's pause there, Commissioner Farnsworth.
Mike, we're kind of doing that with the fire department already, and there were some problems. Have those problem's been rectified, or?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioner Farnsworth is referring to a paramedic training program. We are seeing that we're losing good candidates for incoming firefighters to programs that offer firefighter paramedic training, as ours have been firefighter EMT candidates. We've had 2 or 3 paramedics or firefighters participate in the program. We did lose one that took a job, moved on. Has to do more with the type of pay that's being offered. Most entities, paramedics make more than EMTs. Because our paramedics haven't fully functioned as a paramedic, we're using the trade of paramedic program with Alachua County, and they're doing the official paramedic work until we get enough trained. We hadn't offered any type of stipend, so we've lost one. There are others that express concern, and what we hear from our senior firefighter folks is that unless we offer a similar stipend for fully trained paramedics, we wouldn't expect to keep them.
You talking about raises, Mike?
And
Raises?
yes, it's an increased pay. We offer it as a stipend rather than as an hourly rate, which is kind of what the rest of the firefighter community is doing. There's advantages to that, and we have funded the initial steps of a firefighter paramedic stipend program in this year's budget. Is it 5,000?
Yeah, you got something right here.
It's the stipend that's proposed in this budget would be, it's 5,000 per paramedic if you're fully licensed as a stipend. That is less than, yes, it's less than what Alachua County is paying by TAD. But right now, we're not asking those firefighters to perform as paramedics in an official capacity. They certainly do in an unofficial capacity, but allows us to compete and retain those firefighters that are trained as such. So it's a little bit different. Tuition reimbursement program, one, the employee is at risk. He gets reimbursed if he makes a certain grade, he or she. Also, it goes for general education, because the feeling is that just makes for a better, well-rounded employee. When you go to paramedic school, it's a very specific skill and certification when you get out on these tuition reimbursement program. The city doesn't dictate that the education that you're receiving necessarily is a career step for what you're trained to do. You can be getting a degree in finance and still work every day as in our water department, those types of things. So, some subtle differences.
Yeah, so when we pay for the employee to go to paramedic school or firefighter school, whatever the case may be, and then they leave without fulfilling their requirements as to the amount of time they need to stay with
Obligation,
it.
3-year obligation,
3
correct.
years. And are we able to get those monies back?
Absolutely. Well, and in all one instance that there was an issue when the paramedic left, we were compensated for our investment in paramedic school.
And are we paying for the training for ACLS and PALS?
That's
I got a nod from the
there you
chief
go.
back there.
You got above my pay grade.
We pay for that during our renewal cycle every 2 years.
So if I want to renew my ACLS, I have to go to the fire department?
Right, it's a list.
There you go.
You want to go to college, Mike? Go
No,
get some more degrees?
I've done,
Yeah, after you climb that ladder.
yeah. There's a physical fitness requirement, I'm out.
Mike, I want to talk about the Florida retirement system before we go on to the long-term staffing. You know, I know that when it comes to elected official retirement, I don't quite remember the phraseology, but we're at 1.5, and there's the opportunity to be at 3, but Tallahassee has to open up the window to make that change. If anyone who can articulate this issue better for the commission than I am doing right now, take the floor. And then what I would ask is, if the commission wants to make that request, we send a letter to the appropriate folks in Tallahassee asking, and then is there any, because in order for us to do that, we have to adopt it by resolution. But this is an issue that kind of floats in and out of our vision because we're waiting on Tallahassee, we get busy on other things.
Correct.
Is it possible for us to pass a resolution that says, when Tallahassee opens it up, we want to take advantage of the increase? That way, it's an automatic. We don't have to kind of keep our finger on the heartbeat of Tallahassee, waiting for 2 or 3 years for them to do it, and then hope that somebody who's sitting here tonight remembers this conversation and says, oh, hey, Tallahassee opened it up. Is that, so both of those questions, if you can articulate the issue a little bit better, and then can we pass a resolution that automatically triggers when Tallahassee opens it up?
Mr. Mayor, Dallas can articulate the situation better than I can. He's fairly well versed in it. I think 3 years ago, the commission asked us to pass that resolution during a budget process or research that. That's when we learned that it does take someone in Tallahassee legislature to kind of open the window for that before we could qualify, and that hasn't happened in a number of years, and we're still waiting. So now that I've already explained what I wanted Dallas to explain, he can still expound upon it.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, ditto. Several years ago, the commission did direct staff to input you guys into the elected official class, and we found out that we can only do that either when you join FRS, when the city itself joined FRS, or when the legislature opens that window. The legislature has not opened that window in, I believe, 14 or 16 years. FRS believes that it should be opened every 10 years, but the legislature has not done it. So we cannot currently put you in. There is standing direction from the city commission that when the window opens, that we should put you in. That would have a budget impact when that happened. But as I said, there's no current thought that it would be open. So if the commission wanted to direct staff to issue a letter to our legislators to ask them to open it, that would be the next step.
Okay, so a letter asking to open it. Do we have a head nod? We already have a standing order, and I guess I have a follow-up question, but what does a standing order mean?
The commission directed us.
We've already directed it.
You directed us to put you in the FRS class.
So
the
when
elected
they
official.
open it up, we'll still have to pass a resolution. Or it's automatic since we've already said it.
My understanding in the past is that the FRS would require the commission to adopt a resolution at that time or to adopt an ordinance at that time declaring that your intention is to join the elected official class.
Okay.
But that
For other classes that we have special classes for, there's a process we have to go through of advertising and adopting that we've had to go through.
Okay.
And that adoption of the resolution probably occurs right after the legislature opens the window and we realize, okay, now we got to get our ducks in a row, and we would bring that before the commission.
How does Tallahassee announce and advertise that the window's open? Is that something that we're likely to miss, or is that something that they scream from the rooftops?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I might defer to our city clerk, who may have been here the last time it happened, but my understanding is that they would send the manager a letter. We are also, in your HR department, we talk to FRS at least once a month because we have to report earnings to the FRS. We get notifications from the FRS, and we speak to the FRS quite frequently, so I would imagine there would be a letter to your manager as well as a notice in our FRS. And additionally, throughout the legislative session, your staff monitors the legislation pretty closely. So I don't think it would be a surprise to us because it would be pretty well known that the legislature was intending to open it.
How do you do, Miss Judy? Get them all? Awesome. Okay. Do we have a head nod to send a letter either drafted by me or the manager to the right folks in Tallahassee asking to open this up? I'm saying yes. Okay. We have a head nod. Please draft the appropriate communications with whoever we need to, and let's send that on. All right, do we have any other questions here on the first half of personnel? Retirement, insurance, merit versus COLA, everybody's good with those still budget neutral. Compensation studies out. COLA, we'll use that money to do the COLA and tuition reimbursement program at $15K. I need a head nod if we're good with those programs. Okay? No further questions. Mike, take away long-term staffing plan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have, and we've handed out to you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have and have handed out our long-term staffing plan. I just can't find my copy, but I'm going to find Dallas's copy somewhere. There you go. So I think we've seen that, we've discussed it with the commission once, but this is, normally what we show you is just kind of the rolled up version down at the bottom, but we went through department by department: finance, administration, city clerk, planning, recreation, public works, fire, and city manager. Look 10 years forward to best take our best guesstimate of what we think our staffing needs are going to be based upon our demands now. We've also done an analysis, and that's this other sheet over here. We kind of looked at what staffing guidelines are for municipal government operations, and those numbers bounce around quite a bit, but somewhere 93 to 100 persons per staff person. So if we have had 1,000 people in the city, we might expect there would be 10 staff people, 1,000 population, 10 staff people. Here we're approaching 7,000 population now. If it were truly 100 per, it'd be about 70 positions. At 93, which is the guideline that we've been working with, we're currently understaffed by 12 positions. So we currently have a staffing level of 62.3, and the guideline would be 74. I don't say that it's that we have to hit that target. It's not a competition to see how we can do on that. I think that we use that guideline to help us understand where we are, and then we kind of look at what our workload is looking like for our staff. We're having a town hall meeting tomorrow, and we solicited a survey among our team. So our department heads have been talking about heavy workloads for staff for a number of years, and or for the last year, for a number of months, as maybe we're starting to get very stretched thin. And I think we had anonymous comments, and a third of the comments spoke to the same issue, is that we seem to be really thin-staffed and we're not able to accomplish as much. Some of that's related to COVID. When you have a public works department that has a staff of 4 plus a prison inmate crew of 20, and your prison inmate crews go away, that makes you feel severely understaffed. But all the indicators are there that we are a bit under the mark. I'm looking over the last 10-year period, we've grown staff-wise by an average of 0.7 staff people per year. So in 10 years, we've added 7 people staff. Looking at population, we likely should be, the guideline is adding 2.4 people per year. So you can see you're more than a third below what the guidelines are recommending. And again, we're using that kind of as a gauge to make sure we're where we are. When you're working as hard as you can, you're not quite sure, does that mean you're understaffed or exactly what that is? But our staffing plan tends to support that we can staff up. Our staffing plan doesn't ever exceed these guideline ratios, and this was done independently. Our department heads work with our HR department to come up with the staffing plan. So at no point does the staffing plan suggest that we would have more staff than what these guidelines are. But we believe that we're somewhere 6 to 8 people below what we probably need in the next year or two. And we're going to try to make that up over time, not try to propose 6 to 8 staff people in one fiscal year. We just want to start moving that way. This year's budget includes 4 new positions. They are fully funded in the proposed budget. We are proposing a planner for our planning department. If you sat through last night's marathon of 15 planning items, and I think Brian and Wendy had done a little study, and they'd presented 100 planning items to this commission over a 3 or 4 month, maybe it's a 6-month period. We see a heavy workload that doesn't seem to be a short-term peak, is as long-term. We're also seeing some of the symptoms, in my opinion, of there are some things that are just falling through the cracks simply because we don't have enough resources. Every agenda that we put together, when you're trying to get 15 agenda items put together for the agenda, it's a heavy workload. So you see the entire planning department working well into the night on the evening that those agendas are supposed to go out. And it's a problem that's been going on now for 9 months to a year. We believe this is our most critical need, is the addition of a planner. We are proposing to hire an entry-level planner, so not someone that's AICP certified like Brian or like Wendy is, but someone that we're going to teach the ropes. He'll probably handle more of the, to start with, more simpler applications that come in, and then over time we'll move them up into complexity, dealing with the things that Brian and Wendy come up with. So that's our number one request. Second request is in utility and public works, an area where we need both boots on the ground and administrative support. 2 years ago, we spoke with you, and we had a need for either a projects manager or an assistant utility director. And at the time, we thought that the project manager was where the real need was. And a year into that, we felt like that we may have selected the wrong of the two. We contemplated it for another year, evaluated Jamie's workload, and have determined that we think that this assistant utility director is a need that is present right now. We want to address it, and we think it's the most important need in that area. Thank you. This document here started with the commission asking us, well, staff, what are you doing about succession planning? I should have said that to introduce the whole idea. And where we see our biggest gaps with someone moving is when a senior staff person moves on. An example would be when Lowell, our planner, who was Brian before Brian moved on. Wendy was there and knew some of it, but Lowell took all that institutional knowledge with him, and so we are trying to back people up so that if we lose a key senior staff person, because we want everybody to grow and to learn and take on better opportunities, but we don't want when a Jamie, a Ben, or a Dallas leaves, we have these huge voids where the person that coming in to fill that role is starting from scratch, has no idea how it was done before. Usually the people that work in that department aren't doing the exact same work. They have roles, like in Dallas's area, we have some people that are doing accounts payable and accounts receivable and doing payroll, but no one's doing the budgeting and those types of things that Dallas does, and we just don't have a backup there. So this 10-year staffing plan includes succession planning. If you get down to the individual levels, and we didn't hand that out, but each one of these individual departments, we've identified what the succession planning should be. In Jamie's area, the succession plan is the hiring of an assistant utility director that will support him, and the concept would be that if Jamie decides that it's time to retire and his eligibility for retirement is not that far out, that we have someone that has been learning the ropes from him, is familiar with the system, and would be in a position to step in and take the ropes. And we've had lots of discussions with the commission about where we're going with our water and wastewater treatment plant operations. We got a new permit that's been in the works. I got an email from Jamie this week that says we've done all the negotiation we can do. We can either accept the permit or get out of the business, or hire an attorney and file suit. But we've negotiated the best permit that we're going to get. That permit says that, hey, when your wastewater flows at a certain threshold, your staffing requirement, which is what it is today, is going to increase significantly. Is that double, triple, Jamie?
Our existing permit requires 6 hours of staffing a day. This permit requires a minimum of 16 hours staffing per day. Our existing permit says 1 weekend visit on Saturday and Sunday. This would be staffed 16 hours a day on Saturday and Sunday.
So in anticipation of that, we know that we've already projected, well, when we hit those thresholds, we need this many warm bodies on board. So Jamie's staffing plan reflects that we would pick one up this year and then another one up in a subsequent year, so that we kind of transition into that instead of saying, hey, we got to hire 4 or 5 wastewater operators immediately. And finally, the last staffing position is in relation to administrative support. Currently, the finance department and the city clerk have full-time staff people that have shared duties in multiple departments. And we have plans at the mid-year point, right? This is starting on October 1, mid-year for the clerk's office, that we would transition that person full-time with the clerk. And in Dallas is in the finance area, we'd bring on someone that's currently half-time, bring them on to full-time in October. Again, all these proposed positions are in the staffing plan, and they're fully funded in the budget that's before you.
Okay. Commissioner Farnsworth.
My part of the future was getting the improvement work
I think Jamie's better equipped to answer that. We're hopeful, but I
Come on
don't.
down, Jamie.
He's had some
not gonna let
conversations.
you off
I
the
saw
hook.
some email traffic today where he's working on that.
Sin- The letter of the process, when they suspended the work program, said that the duration of that suspension would be till July 1st when they got their new budget year. We assumed that we would get them back shortly after that. We gave them to pass the 4th of July holiday, and I started harassing not only the institution but central office in Tallahassee. The clarity I got today was that I needed to send an official request asking them to send our 2 squads back. I sent that official request, and if I don't receive a response in a day or two, I will start contacting them again until I either get the inmate squads or I get an answer as to, no, you're never going to have them again, you need to seek other recourse. What I expressed the frustration we had to Tallahassee this morning was not knowing. They need to tell us. Either we're going to get them back, and we plan accordingly, or if we're not going to get them back, we plan accordingly, but we can't just sit here with no communication. So the contract officer is obligated that I will get an answer, and I will harass them until I get an answer.
Well, we appreciate that. Keep the pitchforks and torches heading towards Tallahassee.
So, in Jamie's speak, when he was telling them we need to know, that Jamie's speak for that is we need to make it a boy or a girl. For those of you that do know Jamie speak. If the answer we get back is they're not coming back, at current funding levels, we could hire 3 staff people for roughly that same money, full-time staff people, and clearly 3 full-time staff people aren't going to provide the equivalent work output of 20 inmates. Might get close, but they won't get there. We also will evaluate contracting some of the work that is performed by inmates out. In the day, that was actually a pretty reliable way to go. What we've seen since in the last 2 years is that contract resources are harder to find, or as hard to find as staff are hard to find. So even the vacancies in that area, we've had a really hard time filling, but I think we are fully staffed in Public Works today. We still have 1 vacancy, so it's been a struggle in our field crews to staff up, but that's the status of the inmate crews.
Any other questions about long-term staffing? People comfortable with this direction, these thoughts? You want to put an asterisk on this one and ask staff to bring it back later on? Generally, about halfway through the budget season, we need to start having head nods saying, when we get to September, I'm not going to vote no because you've got a planner in there and I'm against a planner. That kind of a thing.
I ain't against nothing I've heard. It's
Okay.
still for me.
All right.
I mean, it's still, you're talking balance and where's the money?
Right.
Correct.
That's what we're learning.
All right.
Okay.
That's my thought.
Anybody else? Everybody good? What do you got under other benefits on this slide before because we're fast approaching sort of a natural kind
Anything?
of pause.
Mr. Mayor, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, it's kind of a catch-all. If there's anything, other benefits the commission wanted to discuss, the tuition reimbursement program as an option, just a discussion point. If there's any other benefits the commission wants to discuss.
Right now, our benefits are maternity leave, paternity leave, tuition reimbursement. What are the other quality of life type programs that we offer that aren't necessarily calculated in your salary, but are,
Mr. Mayor, the city of Newberry offers a Florida retirement system retirement. It offers free health insurance. It offers free vision insurance, free long-term disability insurance, free vision insurance, free dental insurance, free life insurance, as well as free teledoctor service. We also offer supplemental retirement benefits at the employees' request. We also offer a number of other supplemental benefits, including legal services, short-term disability, all sorts of benefits.
right? I know we're about the only city our size that offers paternity leave.
What?
Paternity leave.
I mean, I know it's a hard nut to crack. I've told it since the day I got here. Insurance is a big deal for me, for employees.
Yeah.
We've went down this road. It's tough. It's expensive. I wish there was more we could do for the employees for that, but as of Mike, myself, and Dallas have said, it's a tough.
It just keeps
crack
going
right
up.
now.
Just keeps going up. Okay, so if there's nothing here, let's do operating, and then let's have a conversation about, it's 9 o'clock. We're not even beginning to get into the meat of tonight's stuff, so let's do operating, and then let's see if I would like to at least get an overview of those 4 capital outlays so we can all kind of go away with some thinking, you know? But in order to do an overview of those 4, it's probably a good another 20, 30 minutes just to do the overview, right? Mike, take us through this operating
Just-
slide here.
Operating, probably the most straightforward part of the budget. We look at each budget that we put out. I look at it as personnel expenses that can be complex, and we've been through that. Operating, these are where we get our fuel. This is where we pay for professional services and those types of things. These are in a continuation budget. These are simply adjusted for increases in population and increases, inflationary increases on some of the goods that we purchase. You know, we may have a contract that says that our base cost for generator services, contract generator services is going to go up 2% annually, so we make that adjustment in here. Or, you know, we see our fuel trending up and we go ahead and make that adjustment. We're not paying $1.80 per gallon for fuel anymore. We're now approaching $2.80 per gallon for fuel. So we make those adjustments. But aside from that, we've not made any changes in our operating budget. We've not proposed any new levels of service. We will discuss either capital or extraordinary expenses. And I give an example. Lime rock purchases for road maintenance is part of our operating budget, and so we project that as a continuation. But a year ago, the commission said we want to increase our funding for that, and we identified that line item, the increased funding for line item, we identified that on the list as an extraordinary O&M expense. So when we say the operating costs are continuation, if there are things that are fit under the operating umbrella, but they're extraordinary, they're going to show up on the list. You can see what's funded and what's not. And Mr. Mayor, that unless there are questions about operating expense, this kind of plays into your, you have a kind of a speech that you go through that 90% of the budget is pretty much captured between personnel and operating. It is what we discuss and have discretion in is this capital improvement program and those extraordinary O&M expenses.
Sounds like I need a new speech. I'm getting redundant. Okay, so it's 9 o'clock. I would propose we do an overview of the 4 big capital outlay projects, and we try to find a date to schedule an additional meeting, and then we call tonight, because that's going to take us to 9:30. If the commission wants to do an overview and try to get through one of those, I predict each one of those capital outlay projects is 30 minutes to 60, depending on the depth of the conversation. So you're looking at least a couple hours there to do that. I think that's a little much to try to put on tonight. Does that sound like a good plan? Let's do an overview of the big 4 big ticket items that were again brought forth by this board. Just give us 20,000 foot level, Mike. You know, this is the project. This is what we think it's going to cost. and then let's spend a little bit of time seeing if we can maybe tonight reschedule another one, and then we will call it for this evening. Mike?
Absolutely. Mr. Mayor, I'm going to point out before I jump into the 4 capital projects, which begin on page 19. There's page 17 and 18. Page 17 is capital improvement program, and it just kind of highlights the categories of capital expenses that we'll be looking at in our budgeting process. Page 20 is the American Rescue Plan Act, which includes some bullet points about the quantity of funding that we would be receiving, the amount of the revenues, and some suggested or projects that we've identified with what we expect those costs to be. I'm not going to cover them at any depth tonight, and there are certainly other projects, but just wanted to put that out there for the commission as these are the potential projects that we've heard mostly from the commission back to us, but I'm certain that there's a project or two in here that we identified that might be good for ARPA funding. So that gets us to page 20. Yes, sir.
Under the American Rescue Plan Act, the broadband fiber, I mean, that's a project that can actually potentially bring revenue to the city. Am I correct on that, or?
Mr. Mayor, I'll start by saying that we understand that to be fiber connectivity for city operations, which likely wouldn't be a municipal customer offering. I don't think that we could go $1 million into a broadband project where we're offering retail service to community. I think that's looking at multiple millions of dollars. Am I correct in that?
We did a study on that a few years
no.
back, and we didn't have enough customer base
Correct. Our
to
take
make
rate.
it.
Yeah, but we've got hundreds upon hundreds of extra homes coming into the city, so.
I mean, I agree.
I don't know
Yeah.
whether that's gonna be a viable thing in the future, and I think it could, I mean, I don't know how much you pay for you out in the boonies.
Crap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know,
But I also know that Federal and Tallahassee
Correct.
are about to put a ton of money into rural broadband.
Yep.
So I would say let's hold off and see what comes out of DC or Tallahassee.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I was just kinda curious, I misunderstood the.
I did too. Mr. Mayor, I'd also point out that our internal evaluation of what it would take to have fiber connectivity between all city facilities, 1 million is probably too heavy of an estimate. Our staff has previously estimated that being closer to 400,000. We'll check those numbers and make that adjustment when we have our discussion about ARPA projects. So moving on, slide 19 is the introductory slide for capital projects, and then we jump into roads. The roads, the commission has discussed with us many times what their priorities are in terms of maintaining the roads as they were dedicated to us. So we would first start with, we'll keep paved roads paved and dirt roads unpaved, and then if we have a second level of our priority, we would pave unpaved city maintained streets, and then a third level priority would be, now that we've addressed those first two, we would start working with the county to pave their roads and convert them to city streets. So we've worked on a downtown core area resurfacing program for a number of years. It's been funded right at the $100,000 level, and because we're seeing increases in gas tax, we propose to continue that. Jamie has done a complete survey of every street in our inventory, has a grading system, and we simply go to those in the worst condition and pave until the money runs out for a year. We identify $100,000 worth of work, we put it out for bid, and we go for it. This year, the project that happened is the one over on the very north side of Newberry High School. We coupled it with the Lift Station 1 project, improved a water main, improved a force main for sure, improved 2 blocks worth of city street, and built a brand new lift station over there. So that's a repaving program. The commission also directed us to explore paving unpaved roads in our urban core. So we've identified that as a potential grant project. Shared earlier with the day that maybe our grant folks were a little less optimistic than we are, but we are still moving forward with that. We understand the grant cycle opens in the spring, and we will be prepared to make a spring submission. In total, the city maintains about 1.7 miles of unpaved road in our downtown district that we seek to pave, and we estimate that cost to be 1.35 million. And here's the table. Yes, sir.
I got a question. Hey, do we get any reimbursement on any of the roads that we do that are split between the county and the city? Do we get any reimbursement from the county?
What our agreement is the county, the gas tax distribution formula is a cost per mile basis, and all the roads that we maintain for Alachua County that are actually county roads, they count those miles in our road inventory. So we receive gas tax revenues for the roads that we're maintaining for the county. So the next two slides are just the tables that have the actual data on the length of road segments, which road segments we're talking about, whose jurisdiction it is, and how much we estimate it would cost to pave those streets. So we also looked at unpaved roads in rural areas. The City Commission last year, when we discussed this with them, did not make this a priority. Just kind of bringing it back for your review information. That was something that would be, I guess, a round two. If round one is to address these downtown core streets, I understood that the City Commission says keep these on the radar, Mike. When we address the round one, this will be the next group of roads that we look at. But as we've mentioned before, we maintain right at 13 miles of unpaved or chip-sealed roads that are Alachua County roads, and conversely, they maintain about 2 miles for us, but we get gas tax revenues for the differential, and that covers a portion of the cost. All of the roads that we maintain that are county roads have segments that with city residents adjacent to, and I would venture a guess that the primary users of those roads are city residents. And the whole impetus that started that program was that city residents that were paying taxes to the city felt like their roads weren't getting properly maintained. The city maintained a higher level of maintenance, a more frequent grading cycle, and agreed to begin maintaining those roads for those ratepayers, or for those residents and taxpayers. That's how
Mike,
we kind of got into that business. Yes, sir.
In the interest of time, let's do the 20,000
Okay,
foot, just
sorry.
on the 4 that we're going to be pushing forward.
Sorry,
And when
Mr.
we
Mayor.
come back, we'll do all the ones that are secondary projects, but let's focus on the 4 that we're really going to ask the commission
All right, so
to
we
pick
are
which one or all of them.
We are pulling down to sheet number 29. The first project in the handout is downtown connectivity. It's the Seaboard Drive project that the commission asked us to look hard. It connects Northwest 1st Avenue, which is 1 block north of State Road 26, to Northwest 15th Avenue. It will allow one more street segment. I believe currently there are just 2 north-south corridors going between 15th and State Road 26. Over in that area where our schools are, that's 264th and that's 260th and 255th. This would give us one more core and would relieve, we estimate that 1/3 of the traffic that is currently trying to move down 255th or 260th would be utilizing this road. It has ample parking and has a higher level of construction than our typical downtown would be kind of the new street segments.
Seaboard Drive.
All the way down to 15?
All the way down to 15.
That's gonna give this opportunity for this development to come in if we do that.
It would, but I think that I think it does present an opportunity for that development. I just want to share with the commission. I don't think that development is the driver. I think that the connectivity and the traffic congestion problems that we have on school days would be the driver for this project. If we were simply looking at one project, we might stop it at that project. Our intention is to shoot straight by it and connect 15th to 26th and have a better corridor for people to move between those 2 roads.
This rendering was kind of conceiving doing
Correct.
downtown, bringing it around, but the road would be our focus, Commissioner Clark.
Correct.
Just the,
Got it.
the people coming back on, or coming on to 26 will have just as much problem as they are trying to get on 27.
Well,
It is extremely congested.
I think, I think one of the benefits, though, if you drop, right now, if you drop your child at Newberry Elementary School, generally parents are going all the way down to 27th and they're getting caught up in the Oakview traffic. I think this gives them an avenue back to 26 that allows them to avoid 27, and I think we should see better traffic flow at 27 and 15th as a result of this. So we divided that whenever we showed it to the commission. It's on page 32. We broke out those costs by segment. Segment 1 is going to go away. FDOT will be constructing segment 1 for us as part of the Twin Pairs project. So really, the city's share of that road project would be segment 2 and segment 3. Mr. Mayor, a project that we didn't share with the commission last time, but we believe just based on feedback from the commission merits as much consideration, is simply the reconstruction of Southwest 15th. It is, I'm on the same slide. Yes, yeah, on the same slide. So it would be a two-phase project. A portion of it would be extending 15th from the cemetery out to County Road 337 to relieve that traffic that was going out on 26th and then turning right back and coming in on 260th. And then a phase, the other phase would be reconstruction of the existing road from the cemetery or 260th east to 15th Avenue. If you've been down there during the day, there is no street parking, and people just park everywhere. The school is talking about constructing additional classrooms to expand the capacity of Newberry Elementary School, and that is going to cause further traffic congestion. So the concept there is to repave the road, provide for sidewalks to, for safety for school children, but also to provide ample parking, as much parking as we can jam in from 255th, which is just east of Newberry Elementary School, all the way down to 260th, which is at the cemetery entrance, so that parents at the track at Newberry High School or parents at Newberry Elementary School would have a place to park. That's a potential partner project with the school board that hopefully will be a good partnership.
Again, just for transparency's sake, you guys pushed 3 projects forward. This one had some time sensitivity, became an opportunity for us kind of midway, but it's a really good opportunity, especially when if we're thinking about trying to get people. I know we don't have a whole lot of people going west. If I drop my kids off at Newberry Elementary and I'm trying to go west, now I can get straight out to 337. I think this would be pretty big, and we just won a state championship for baseball, so I anticipate some more people showing up to those baseball games, needing a place to park. Go ahead. I didn't mean to get us back down into the weeds. Let's stay at 20,000.
Absolutely. Slide 34, just different funding options that we've identified for the commission to consider. I think that next deep dive workshop, what I believe we're going to do is be very laser focused on what those funding options are, how we could, and how much revenue they'll generate by comparison to how much lending or bonding capacity that we would have, so the commission could say we want to do A, B, C projects, Mike, those total X, and these are the revenue sources that we want to pledge to make those bond payments. I think it'll be pretty straightforward when we get to that point. The next project, Mr. Manager, City Hall, we've been working on that for the year. We're in a conceptual design phase. We currently expect to build about 9,000 square feet of new, renovate this building. We think those projected costs are in the $3 million range.
Did we ever decide if we were going up or out, or we never?
That's still in the works. Right now.
We've got a workshop just on that question coming up.
Correct. Yeah, our next workshop's at the end of this month, and we're going to work on site plan. How does the commission want to see the whole campus look, where they'd like to see their new city hall constructed. The next slide, Mr. Mayor, is 36. It just shows what some debt service and annual payment scenarios would look like at different interest rates. And Mr. Mayor, that concludes our 20,000 foot overview of 4 projects.
Okay, so that covered urban roads, connectivity, city hall expansion, 15. Okay, those are the four that this board has expressed significant interest in. We've got other things in here that we need to go over as well. So what I would suggest, and this is just an idea, maybe it might help induce, but you know, we used to do these workshops every once in a while. We'd put some tables out, you know, in a big rectangle, and we'd kind of sit, and it made it a little less formal, and we could just kind of have more conversations. If we prefer this format, that's fine. But you know, we're meeting at 7, so maybe if we got down there, we order some pizza. You know, maybe it would just help. I know you don't eat pizza. We'll order Chinese food.
Make it 6.
Well, you have a hard time getting here at 6, right, Commissioner Maison? I know you don't eat pizza. Don't even bring it up. Don't even bring it up, Jerry. So un-American. Yeah. That's why he's an FSU fan, though. That's why. They're all weird. They're all weird. Anyway, we can decide it later, but I mean, I think in terms of these 4 projects, what we need the maps, and we need at some point, and this is going to be the mantra I keep. We need to say in a vote or head nod, we're moving forward with City Hall expansion, and we're paying for it with X. We're moving forward with this, and we're paying for it. And there's going to be some benefits to bundling these projects and taking out one loan, right? That's what we'll do a deep dive in and have that conversation. But last year, we had this conversation, and it was to get to this point, we need to know exactly how much each of these projects is going to cost. How would we pay for it? Well, we're here now, so now we need to know which of these projects is moving forward and which is putting on the shelf. Okay?
I'd rather get right down there at the table, that way we can all discuss just like,
I kind of feel like that might help a little bit.
more informal, we ain't got all this mumbo jumbo, we can pass papers,
Right.
we can actually discuss right here
Right.
together.
That's a great idea.
All right.
Is that what that's
Maybe. I had COVID.
He's immune now.
We can switch. Mike and I will sit up there now.
Do we want to try to find a date for that tonight?
Absolutely, I think
Here we have some
Dallas may have some
suggestions.
suggested dates.
Mr. Mayor, the one date that is not on here, we have a majority of the commission has responded that August 28th would be the day for our strategic planning workshop. So just keep that in mind when setting this date.
I mean, I think actually for this, a Saturday might be beneficial because maybe we might get some more public. I think this is going to be a good 4 hours.
Saturday.
So if we could start at like a 9 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday.
Sounds good to me. I will make it.
You will make it?
Sounds good to me.
On that part that he's not going to be there? That's what sounds good to you? Okay, well, he's making stuff. He's saving lives, right? Saturday. Oh, all right. Does anybody have another? My only concern, we do it in the evening. If we start at 7, and it's a 4-hour meeting, then we shouldn't schedule one meeting. We should go on schedule 2, right? Because I think after 2-3 hours up here, we get a little bit loopy, So, do we want to go for a Saturday and Commissioner Farnsworth can come in at 11 for half of it, or do we want to try to do 2 evenings?
The problem is Mr. Farnsworth has got to go to project.
Well, that's over by 11, so he'll be
It's-
here by 11.
Mr. Mayor, the Saturday, the 24th, I guess Dallas and I didn't coordinate. I'm out of town. My daughter's moving back to college that day. I don't
Okay.
think I can save my marriage and still attend the workshop.
Here's what I think we should do. Dallas sent out a really cool 21st century survey where we could click the days that we were available, and it linked our preferences. If you'll send that out tomorrow with this, and then if everybody will commit to responding to that, then we'll send you the calendar invite. And if you don't show up, you have to go with whatever the majority said.
So you're gonna take the Saturday off because you can't make it. So Saturday's out.
No, just one Saturday that I'm out.
He's
That
got
one
July
Saturday, but
24th.
there's-
I honestly think we need to get this sooner rather than later,
I think so too.
because we have got to get this kind of nailed down.
Understood.
Yeah.
And I don't care
Well,
about Saturday or
I'll-
any of that, I'll
I'll-
do 6
I'll-
o'clock on
Well, I'll
a,
put
any
some,
night for 2 hours at a time, it doesn't
well,
matter.
Mr. Mayor, I'll put some evenings in next week. If that's the only time that's convenient for the commission, that trip that I'm taking, could be sacrificed easier than the move your daughter to college.
We don't wanna, yeah, we can accommodate. We've got, 'cause I'm with Commissioner Clark. I'm good for a Saturday. I'm good for just about any night of the week. I just think the goal should be a 2-hour
About a
meeting.
2-hour window each time. Let's
Right.
just get
That
this
keeps us
done.
fresh, it keeps us
Look,
focused, keeps us
I think
moving.
if we could do it every day, I'd be great. You know what? This is the only thing that I'm doing.
Well, and to that point, Mr. Mayor.
Right.
Staff knows a lot, and we can do really deep dives on this stuff. But we want to make it, time well spent for the commission. If you really want to dive in deep on these projects, schedule some time, and we'll sit down and we'll take you on a deeper dive that may expedite questions and time during workshops.
Well, and I also say, there's a lot of staff here. Everybody's got families and lives, and this is,
Right.
we don't need all this every time. I think if we're gonna pick the staff, pick the night they're here, because we don't need to waste
Right.
all this time.
And we also have City Hall expansion workshops where we can look at renderings and make those kinds of
Well, I'm just
decisions.
saying,
We've got visioning stuff,
Throw it
right?
out there.
And thank
So-
you.
Miss Judy's got like 3 kids from daycare.
All right, so Dallas is gonna send out an email. Everybody click, and the way that goes is you click, I can do, these are the dates I can do,
Okay.
these are the dates I prefer. And then we'll come back and we'll see. Again, it is possible for you not to show up to a workshop and just watch the video later, and then you can express your, if you really deviate, but you can listen to the deep dive and you can express your opinion later on. Workshops, we don't vote, we get information. So if we're down one person, it's not like we got a board, right? We just need to make sure that everybody understands that's kind of the rules we're all agreeing to. Okay, any last thoughts from staff? Dallas?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to mention typically at this workshop, we go through each of your departments and say, here's what your budget was last year, here's what it is this year. Clearly, we didn't do that this year. That information is in the back of the PowerPoint, so I just want to make sure the commission is aware that we did provide that information and is available to you.
All right. Okay,
We don't need to keep reprinting these, we don't bring these back with us.
Yeah.
Or just leave them.
you put it in your drawer and just leave it there, and then we'll come back or take it home and study it. Yeah.
We
Any
keep-
last,
No comment.
any last comments from staff? Any last comments from, we don't have any public here to comment. Miss Judy, you got any final thoughts? We are adjourned.